Have you ever wondered why 6 of the most well-known pastors did not attend Jimmy Swaggart's funeral? The question surprised many people because Jimmy was a figure who touched millions of lives through his ministry, his preaching, and his gospel music. His funeral was one of the biggest gatherings in the Christian world. The church was filled with mourners. People came from far and wide, and the service was broadcast widely so that those who could not attend in person could still be part of the moment. Yet in the middle of all the emotion, there was something unusual that stood out. 6 pastors who everyone expected to see were not there. Their absence was noticed immediately. It quickly became one of the most discussed parts of the funeral. Jimmy Swaggart was not just a preacher. He was a man who built one of the largest ministries in the world. From his early days of small gatherings to the worldwide television broadcasts that reached millions, he became a household name in America and beyond. Sermons for encouragement, watched his services for inspiration, and sang along with his gospel songs that carried messages of hope and faith. Through his words and music, Jimmy became a spiritual guide for countless families. His journey was not without struggles, but he often reminded people that no matter the mistakes, God's grace was always available for those who sought it. That message of forgiveness and new beginnings defined his ministry, and it is why his passing was felt so deeply by so many. The day of his funeral was filled with sorrow and reflection. The church overflowed with people wanting to say goodbye. Families stood together, holding hands. Some cried quietly, while others shared memories of how Jimmy's teachings had changed their lives. Flowers surrounded the sanctuary, and soft gospel music played in the background, reminding everyone of his voice and the hymns he loved to sing. People traveled long distances to attend, proving just how much of an impact Jimmy had on their lives. For many, being there was not just about honoring a pastor. It was about paying respect to someone they considered part of their own spiritual family. But in the middle of all this grief, something else became the topic of conversation. People looked around expecting to see certain pastors who had often worked with Jimmy, shared platforms with him, and praised his work, yet they were missing. 6 well-known pastors who were admired in their own right were absent. This was not something people could ignore. At first, many thought perhaps they had entered late or were sitting somewhere unnoticed. But as the service went on, it became clear that they had not come at all. The pastors in question were not ordinary figures. Each of them was well respected. In the Christian community, one was known for leading a very large church and for his simple but heartfelt sermons. Another was both a pastor and a singer, famous for his gospel songs that touched people across the country. The third pastor was recognized for his powerful preaching and for traveling internationally to spread messages of hope. The fourth pastor was known for his calm and gentle style, often speaking about peace and kindness. The fifth was a woman, pastor who had spent her life working with families, women, and children, teaching resilience and unity. The sixth pastor had devoted much of his life to education and helping young people build their future with strong values. Each of them had, at some point, shared a connection with Jimmy Swaggart. Some had stood beside him at events, some had sung with him, others had spoken kindly of him in public. Their absence at the funeral, therefore, raised eyebrows immediately. As soon as the funeral ended, the discussions grew louder. People began talking about it both in person and online. Social media was filled with comments, questions, and theories. Some expressed disappointment, saying they felt it was wrong for these leaders not to attend. Others were more understanding, saying there must be good reasons behind it. News reports about the funeral also highlighted the absence, which only fueled more speculation. The funeral, which was meant to be about celebrating Jimmy's life and saying farewell, now also carried a second story that people could not ignore. When questions go unanswered, rumors often spread, believed there might have been personal disagreements between the pastors and Jimmy's ministry. Others speculated that maybe health issues or travel commitments had prevented them from attending. A few thought there might have been private family matters involved. Social media, as always, added to the speculation. Some defended the pastors, urging people not to jump to conclusions, while others criticized them for not showing up. Conversations grew day by day until finally, the truth started to become clear. The reality was that each pastor had their own reason, and the reasons were far less dramatic than people imagined. The first pastor was overseas at the time of the funeral. He had been scheduled to attend a major international event many months before and was unable to travel back on short notice. He sent a message of condolence and prayers to the Swaggart family. The second pastor had been struggling with health problems. His doctors had advised him not to travel, and while he had hoped to be there, his health did not allow it. He later sent a public note saying that he was present in spirit, even if not in person. The third pastor faced a sudden family emergency. A close relative needed him urgently, and he chose to stay with his family during that difficult time. The fourth pastor had a major event in his own church, scheduled on the very same day, an event that hundreds of his members were depending on. He could not cancel it, but he made sure to send flowers and a heartfelt message to Jimmy's family. The fifth pastor chose to spend the day serving her community in honor of Jimmy. She organized help for families in need, saying that was her way of continuing his legacy of service. The sixth pastor had unresolved issues with someone connected to Jimmy's ministry. While he could not be physically present, he later reached out privately to the family with words of condolence and peace. These explanations showed that none of the pastors skipped the funeral out of disrespect. Life circumstances, health, commitments, and personal matters were the real reasons. Each of them still cared deeply for Jimmy and his family, and each found a way to express that care, even if they could not attend in person. When Jimmy's family learned about these reasons, they responded with grace and understanding. They knew that love is not only shown by being physically present. Love can be expressed in many ways through prayers, words, and small acts of kindness. They chose to focus on the outpouring of support they had received, rather than the absences. Their response reminded everyone that forgiveness and compassion were values Jimmy had always preached. This entire story carries an important lesson. In life, things do not always go the way we expect. Sometimes people cannot be present when we hope they will be. It can be disappointing, but it does not always mean there is a lack of respect or care. Before judging others, it is always better to understand the circumstances. The missing pastors were still connected in spirit, and they still honored Jimmy in their own ways. The truth also reflects Jimmy's own teachings. He often spoke about forgiveness, about letting go of hurt feelings, and about understanding others, even when it was difficult. His funeral and the discussions around it became another reminder of those values. Rather than focusing on absence, people were reminded to focus on the love, the prayers, the good memories that defined his life. In the end, Jimmy Swaggart's funeral was not about who attended and who did not. It was about honoring a man whose ministry spanned decades and whose words touched millions. The six pastors who were absent had their own reasons, but their love and respect were still present. The focus returned to Jimmy's message of hope, forgiveness, and the power of faith. This story shows us that true legacy is not measured by one day or by who stands at our funeral. It is measured by the lives we touch, the people we help, and the hope we leave behind. Jimmy Swaggart's legacy lives on in every heart he reached and in every message of forgiveness and love that still inspires people today.